All right, there we go. Hello and welcome. So I want to welcome three very special guests today who I'm very excited to have with us. So we have Jameta Barlow, who is an assistant professor in the Women's Leadership Program and does a lot of great things here at GW. And we also have Saray Smalls, who is a senior health promotion and education program associate with the Colonial Health Center. And then Tamara Washington, who is the Assistant Director of the Office of Advocacy and Support here at GW. So I'm going to turn it over to them to hear more about wellness in these times.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bethany. Thank you for the introduction from the honors program, the University Honors Program, and just welcome to all of you to GW. We're so excited to, if you're new to GW, if not, thank you for joining us tonight. I'm going to share my PowerPoint and we'll get started. My name again is Jameta Barlow, and I'm excited to be with all of you tonight. All right, so this is the self-care roundtable, and what you're in for is a treat. It's going to be a podcast style roundtable, so hopefully everyone can see the PowerPoint. I just want to start off with to just kind of, we don't have to be reminded, but this moment that we're in, this context of COVID-19, and it's affecting all of us. So there's this collective grief that we're all experiencing. You might know someone who's had COVID, or you might not know someone, or you might know someone distantly who's had it, or maybe has not fought their battle with it and been successful. And so within that context of COVID, we also have this pandemic of racism, and we're seeing a lot of violence being perpetrated against people of color, particularly Black people. And so that's going to frame a lot of what we do this year as you're a student, as we're moving through the school year. So I want to keep that in the back of our mind. And then I just want to talk to you about this term self-care. You may have heard about it quite a bit. But just so you know, I like to invoke these two quotes when I talk about self-care. And a lot of people think that self-care is about getting a massage or getting a mani-pedi, but self-care can be as simple as taking a walk on a trail, or walk around your neighborhood if you are in a safe neighborhood and you feel comfortable walking. Self-care is getting enough rest, getting sleep, and some of these other things that I have listed here. And so when you hear us talk about self-care, that's what we're talking about when we're talking about wellness and self-care. And so I love these two quotes. For some people, they look at this caring of self, thanks to Audre Lorde, looking at it as it's not self-indulgence, it is in fact self-preservation for the purpose of sustaining oneself. The other quote I love is by Toni Cade Bambara. And I love this. And if you're not familiar with her work, I definitely encourage you to check her out. But really asking, do you want to take care of yourself? Do you want to be well? Because there's some people who are okay with that not being the case. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. And so now I want to move on and just introduce formally. You got the formal introduction from Dr. Kang, Bethany Kang, but what you're going to get from me is just a little more detail about my co-podcast style folks. And I talk with my hands, so you'll see my hands over my face at different times. So Tamara Washington is GW's Assistant Director of Advocacy for the Office of Advocacy and Support. She advocates for and supports persons affected by any form of crime. Ms. Washington is a credentialed advocate, and she'll talk about what that means, who holds her Bachelor's of Science in Justice Studies, a Master's of Education in Professional Counseling and Higher Ed, and she's currently pursuing a doctoral degree in Higher Ed Administration. Tamara Washington has specific interests in the healing experiences of Black and cisgender college women who also experience sexual assault. And then you have Saray Smalls, and she serves as the Senior Health Promotion and Education Program Associate here at GW. In this position, she leads Raise Up GW, and she can talk to you more about that. It's a campus-wide student well-being initiative. Saray has dedicated her 7-year career in college student wellness to increasing access to well-being services and encouraging students to have ownership of their health behaviors. She holds a master's in public health from the University of South Carolina. And so now I just want to welcome both of you. I'm actually gonna, before I turn my PowerPoint off, I want you to pay attention to what we have at the bottom: love, care, and community. That's gonna be kind of the theme for us tonight, to talk about self-care, but to talk about love, care, and community. So now that you've seen our very formal pictures, now you get to see us in COVID times. Wonderful. All right, welcome ladies, how are you?
I'm doing good. Hey, Dr. Barlow. Hey, Tamara.
Hello, I'm good. I have on some workout clothes, so this is definitely COVID. So just FYI, I'm feeling comfortable. I want everybody else to feel comfortable too.
Absolutely.
Well, we just like to welcome those of you who are with the University Honors Program. And because we're small enough, it might actually be helpful to just kind of have you introduce yourselves too. So if you can tell us your name, so we can say it correctly, so pronounce your name, where you're located in the world. We recognize everyone is all over the place. And just one reason why you decided to show up today. Who'd like to go first?
I can go first. I mean, I'm not a student, so. But yeah, I'm Brianna. I'm calling from DC. What are the other questions? I'm sorry.
And why you showed up today?
She, her, hers. And I showed up today because self-care and wellness and mental health, those are all things that I'm really passionate about and always advocate for. And I'm always really honest about that when talking with students. So I just want to learn more and, hear from, honestly, other women of color on this issue too, because I feel like, at least in the Black community, mental health and wellness isn't really talked about. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you, Brianna, and thank you for being our brave soul to go first. And so you don't have to speak if you don't want to. Anna, thank you. You're in Minnesota, and I'm so glad that you're here with us. And Julia, if you can introduce yourself if you want, or you can just hop in the chat. You are more than welcome. And then to all of you who are on the recording, no, you're not here with us at this moment, but we're so glad that you took this time to talk about self-care. So let's get into it. All right. So I want you all to talk to me. We have this thing called love, care, and community. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? What does that mean to you when you hear love, care, and community? Tamara or Saray?
Yeah, Saray, I'll let you go first.
Absolutely. So love, care, and community is something that I meditate on often when I'm thinking about how I need to care for myself, why it's important to care for myself. So I think a lot of times, especially this generation, as a millennial and then working closely with Generation Z, we're really in the space of advocating for others and wanting to care for our community. We are protesting. Whether we are protesting via marching, we're protesting via not spending our money in a certain place, or we're advocating on the behalf of others in a lot of space. We may be caring for a parent, a sibling, a family member, providing some type of care and support for other folks. And so I recognize that there's a step before taking care of my community, right? So before I can take care of my community, I have to first take care of myself. And that is so important. And Tamara and Dr. Barlow will definitely jump in further about what does it mean to take care of yourself. I know there was a shout out to mud mask, like why doesn't a mud mask count as self-care, right? But even thinking prior to the step of self-care, it's like, well, why? Why do I want to take care of myself? What about me is worthy or valuable of providing care for? So that's where I think about self-love. So before we can get to take care of the community, we have to take care of ourselves. But before we can take care of ourselves, we have to recognize what the important parts of ourselves. We need to love ourselves, cherish ourselves, find ourselves worthy. And at that point, once you're recognizing, whether through identity development, sitting with self, self-appreciation, affirmations, etc., sitting with self and really understanding what are the parts of you that hold true What are the parts of you that are worthy, are significant? Then you can start making the path or making the switch towards caring for self and others. And so typically at this point in our conversation, I invite folks to kind of share, what are parts of themselves that they love most. Usually we talk about five. So what are your top five things that you love most about yourself? They can be beyond the physical. They can be physical. They can be internal. They can be characteristics. I always share how much I love my hair. As a Black girl, a Black woman, hair is significant to me. And so falling in love with my natural hair was really, really important. Important part of my identity and important part of my self-care, right? So hair is something that's significant to me. But also I think something I'm doing right now, I'm actually preparing a meal for a friend who recently lost a loved one. So in my culture, someone loses a loved one, you make them food and you take it to their house, their home. So I'm in the process of doing that. So I love the way that I love on other people. Those are parts of me that I need to hold true and really take care of. So when I dip my toe into the self-care realm, I'm recognizing I'm doing this because there's something about Saray that is important and valuable to the world that I am in. So I invite folks to add things to the chat that they love about themselves. My colleagues here that are with us, feel free to add in the chat or verbally add as well. So I see folks saying their smile, their selflessness, their brain, absolutely. A love of science fiction. That's amazing. All of those pieces of you are valuable and worthy. So that's typically where we start this conversation, is in self-love. Tamara and Dr. Barlow, was there anything else you all wanted to share?
Sure. So yeah, I'm so appreciative of Saray when she starts off with that, because it helps us really restructure how we see self-care. And so Dr. Barlow started at the beginning with the Audre Lorde quote. And so, usually when we hear the word self-care, it's like, oh, like Dr. Barlow said, it's a mud mass, or we're gonna go riding on the bike. It can be those things, but it's about giving love to yourself. It's about self-love. Literally, that's what it is. So we recognize, and I want to name this here, that self-care can be wrapped around in this idea of privilege and negative connotations. And as a Black woman myself, I hear, oh, why don't you just engage in self-care? But some of that is just like, well, every day I'm living through this world. I'm living through X, Y, and Z isms, and me thriving and surviving is self-care, right? And so we want to name that here, that we recognize that, certain bodies and certain people are experiencing things every day, and them just showing up is, loving themselves. But also, how do we do that intentionally on a daily? And that's where we break down this idea of love for yourself before you can pour into other people. So that's what I'll add here in this part. Dr. Barlow?
Yeah, no, I love how the conversation's going, because, the idea of self-care goes, I love the example of, if you've ever traveled and you're on an airplane and they tell you to put your mask on before you help others. And that's what self-care really is. And I know Saray has a really good example she likes to share about that. So I won't use that as an example. But what I love about that as an example is that you cannot give of yourself to others if you don't first take care of yourself. And I know, depending on your culture, I know in my culture, it's one of those things, is that you're supposed to be a good daughter. You're supposed to be a good granddaughter. And there's certain things, if you don't do it, oh, you're not being good. And there's that pressure, right? And so I think for a lot of you who are in the University Honors Program, you're going to have added pressures, right? And so just know that that's going to happen. And that's why you have to come in, if you're not, come in with a plan. And I always tell people to have a self-care plan. I tell my students to have a self-care plan, especially in this COVID moment that we're in right now. You have to know who your squad is that you can call for different things. I have friends I can call who will just make me laugh. Just talking to them will just bring me great joy and make me laugh. And sometimes all you need is a good laugh. You need to have those friends that you can call to uplift you, and have those activities that you can draw upon. And so that plan you reach to, that becomes your tool, right? It's this toolkit, however you want to call it. But it allows you in those moments when you're feeling overwhelmed, you can actually calm yourself down. So one of my favorites that I love to share with people is 579. And so this is a plan that I'm giving you, something to add to your toolbox or your toolkit, whatever you want to call it. And so what is 579? Well, I'm a researcher. I'm a psychologist with a public health background. And one of the things that I do as a researcher is I look at how we can disrupt the cardiometabolic syndrome, particularly among Black women. So what is cardiometabolic syndrome? Well, that has to do with cortisol. It's that stress hormone. So when you're feeling like you see a threat in your life and your cortisol hormone increases. It's a way of protecting yourself. And we call that fight or flight, right? And it works with adrenaline. But the thing about cortisol, if you have too much in your body for a prolonged period of time, we know it plays a role in diabetes, hypertension, stroke, obesity, and that is what we call cardiometabolic syndrome. So what we know from a lot of that research is if you practice 579, so breathing in for 5 seconds, holding for 7 seconds, and letting it out for 9 seconds, we know that it can, in fact, decrease the amount of cortisol in your body. And so I always encourage people to do that at this point. So I'm asking all of you who are here with me tonight to, on your own, breathe in for 5 seconds, hold for 7 seconds, and then let it out for 9 seconds. And repeat that 3 times. Okay, so some of you breathe, your breath, or your count might be longer than others. But yeah, the holding the whole 7, yeah, it is a bit harder. Brianna, you're so right. It is a bit harder to hold for 7 seconds, but part of it is allowing your body. I do believe that the body can heal itself in many ways if we give it the correct tools. And so how do you feel? How did that feel, that 579? I know it was only 3 times, but did anyone feel a little bit differently? Do you notice a change in your breathing now, maybe a change in how you're feeling? Feel free to just put that in the chat. Yes, more relaxed. And so I encourage you, when I have these moments, because yes, as faculty, we have moments of anxiety still, right? We get anxious as well as students probably do. And so what I really encourage you to do is when you have those moments, that's what I do. I'll do 579. I'll do several rounds of that to really just calm myself down. And then I feel more relaxed and I feel better able to address the issue at hand. So what are some tools that you all use, Tamara and Saray?
Yeah, great question. 9 is hard. I need more lung. Yeah, same here. It took me a while to be able to actually do that ratio. So listen, this is the first time. We don't expect you to do it in that manner. So don't be too hard on yourself. And that brings us to this next point that me and Saray will emphasize here too as we're talking, is that certain things isn't for everyone. And so for me, sometimes the breathing does work, especially when I am just overwhelmed. I have a long to-do list. Saray and I were just talking about our long to-do list and how our flight, fight, and freeze responses kicked in, and we were overwhelmed with all these thoughts, and we just did not want to act. Like we couldn't do anything else. So sometimes the breathing techniques work there. But other times for me, it's turning on some Sade. For my people that know Sade, it could be you. And just sitting for a second through that one song and maybe playing it over repeat twice. That really centers me and calms me down. Yes. And then also I do have a plant that I water every single day that I've named after myself. It is flourishing. It is thriving. All the other plants in my house suck, but this one, for some reason, is named after me and is amazing. So anytime I need to step away from just my emails or just anything else, I might walk over there and just talk to it. Really, like I'm loving myself. Like I'm like, Tamara, you look so beautiful today. And it's like you're really tricking your mind. Like seriously, I am, watering it. And so I'm like, oh yeah, you do look good today. So those are the ways in which I am engaging in self-love, self-care. I'll let Saray go and tell you how she engages in self-care.
I'm like fangirling over you right now, Tamara. Oh my goodness. So I think about self-care in 3 buckets or 3 boxes or 3 cups, however you want to consider it. I think we've gone through one, which is more of the relaxation, meditation spaces, recognizing that in mindfulness, recognizing that those things may not be for everybody, but it is nice to have a couple in your back pocket. I know some other ones that we've gone through together as colleagues are the body scan. We've done the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I forget what that one is called exactly, but we've done that together, and we're welcome to lead you all through those to provide some additional examples. You can also utilize apps like Calm or Headspace to find some of those other meditations as well. The second one I think is what Tamara was hinting at a moment ago, is in that disconnect. So I think about meditation and mindfulness as one box, and then disconnect as another box. It is completely okay to unplug from social media, take a break from the screens. I think we are all consumed with the screens right now. Hashtag Black Mirror. That's my show. That's another space for me to disconnect. So maybe it is binge watching a show and taking some time for yourself. Maybe it is journaling. Maybe it's having a personal dance party. Maybe it is working out, going for a run. Maybe it's getting a full 7 to 9 hours worth of sleep. Actually, that's the recommendation for us as young adults and adults, is 7 to 9 hours. So if you're only operating on 5, you're not doing it right. But all of those things are in the disconnect bucket, right? And then we have the connect bucket. So that's what Dr. Barlow noted a moment ago when she mentioned like wanting to talk and laugh and giggle with a friend. Connecting with those people that are going to provide an element of care and support for you. Who can you surround yourself? Who is in your top 5? Who are your board of directors, as I refer to them, that can really provide a care and concern? Do you have them shared or saved as favorites in your phone? My top 5 are in my favorites in my phone. They are quickly accessible to me. If one is not available for FaceTime, I can get in touch with another one. If they're not available, I can get in touch with another one. But connecting in a way that really builds upon that community that you are so much wanting to take care of as well. So we've got our passive, or excuse me, not passive, our meditation practices, mindfulness practices, the ways that we disconnect from others and really just hone in on our own energy, and then the ways in which we receive energy and support from others when we connect. So I think all of mine are wrapped up all over the place. I'm a body scanner, so I'm constantly paying attention to my shoulders and, okay, I'm a little tense, let me relax. I'm very mindful of how anxiety shows up in my body, which is in my lower back. So when I'm excessively worrying about something in the future, I get a lower back pain, which is telling me I need to take a second for myself. I need to disconnect. I need to breathe. I need to maybe take a day off. I need to cancel that meeting. And then the ways in which I connect with my community, whether it be through SquareFit, seeing the people in my fitness classes, virtual, in person, very, very helpful. If it is something as far as like going home and visiting family or FaceTiming family, that's another good way that I connect. So those are just some of the things that I do personally.
No, I love it. Those were great. I love that you mentioned sleep, and I want to talk a little bit about sleep versus rest, because your body needs both, and they're not the same. So some people are like, "Oh yeah, I got rest. I went to sleep." No, that's different. And so what happens, and why we need like 7 to 9 hours of sleep? Your body, your brain is literally the first computer ever, right? It's the first computer you ever know, and you have to give it time to reboot. And there's a period during your sleep where your body reboots, and we call that your rapid eye movement, so REM. Okay, so that's when your body, the cells are rebuilding, they're regenerating, they're doing all that work. That's where your important organs, like they're all important, right? But the really important ones, like your liver, that's when it's processing everything that has happened, that you drank, that you ate the night before. And so when you don't get enough rest to allow yourself to go into that, it's usually about a 2 to 3 hour period in your sleep where your body can regenerate or can reboot itself. And that's when your liver is processing everything. And so your liver is important because it plays a role in cardiometabolic syndrome, as I mentioned earlier. But if you don't get to REM, you don't allow your liver to get to that point, things happen. And we want to prevent these things from happening, right? We want everything to work smoothly. So getting sleep, that is so essential. Now, I know, like all of you, we have busy lives, even in COVID. Things are due. People want things. And now that classes have started, you're going to have papers that are due. But it's still important that you get your sleep. Now, rest is distinct from sleep, all right? So sleep is that, I always say 8 to 9, just to make sure that people get at least 7 to 8. So 8 to 9 hours of sleep, right? So that's sleep. But rest is meditation. Now, meditation isn't for everyone. Rest is also like restorative yoga. So you can just Google restorative yoga. There are a lot of poses where your body will basically just kind of fall into the ground and it can heal itself. You hold the poses for like 8-9 minutes. There's also yin yoga. You can also practice rest simply by being still. Now, a lot of people have problems doing that, and that's okay. I see that in the chat, Saray has shared about playlists with sleep, and I like the Liberate app. The Liberate app used to be free. They now charge. So unfortunately, there's a cost. But what I love about it, it was made for and by people of color. And so some of the actual affirmations and things that are shared might be helpful to you and your culture if that's relevant. So that's what I think about when I think about rest and sleep. It's getting adequate water, right? We need to drink water. We need to eat a balanced diet. All of these things are important, not only for your immune system, which we need strong immune systems in this time, but also for your overall endocrine and all those other symptoms that play a role. And so we want to make sure that we stay healthy as we're doing this very important work and this very challenging work that you're going to be doing in the program. What are some, I want to hear from Tamara and Saray a little bit. Tell me more about what you do in your job.
Oh, sure. So I work, interestingly enough, I got 2 introductions today. Thank you, Bethany. Thank you, Dr. Barlow. And Bethany actually mentioned that I work in the Colonial Health Center, and Dr. Barlow's slides show that I work in the Office of Student Life. So my office actually sits right in between those 2 units. So the Colonial Health Center is a set space to provide counseling, medical services, insurance support for our students here at GW. And so my position in working with the health center is really making sure that students clearly understand how to access the services that are in the health center. As new young adults, a lot of you all may have been taken to the doctor by a parent. Or a guardian or a loved one. And so not really fully understanding what it means to go and see somebody, whether for medical care or for counseling care. A lot of times college is the first time that students are experiencing those things by themselves for themselves. So my responsibility is to make sure that there's a clear understanding of how to navigate those things. I actually consider myself and my colleague, Zarina, to be like czars for those areas. We've got to be all knowing across the center and knowing from immunization records how to submit those to how to make a medical appointment. On the of the Office of Student Life, what's so unique there is that we get to do a lot of programming as it relates to health and well-being. So whether it's outreach or programming like we're doing tonight, ensuring that students have understanding of techniques, skills that they can acquire and utilize that ensure that they are being well and taking care of themselves. So I know we talked quite a bit about self-care, of course. I did want to add that to think of self-care as a prevention-based method rather than a reactionary-based method. Sometimes we get really worked up. And so this is, again, a part of my office, right? We get really worked up in doing and going and going and going and going. And then we say, oh, I need a break. I need to take care of myself. And then we take care of ourselves. But I really want people to, students to reframe their minds thinking that self-care is an ongoing practice that should be done daily, not just in times of stress or angst or depression. So really hone in on the fact that it's ongoing, the same way that you have a daily routine. Be sure to include self-care in that routine. The last thing that I did want to make mention of is our Raise Up GW Wellbeing Initiative. That website I'll actually find and drop it in the chat here in a moment, but you can actually Google Raise Up GW and it'll show up. It is a well-being initiative that we've outlined for our students, really trying to help them engage in well-being techniques, well-being programming, ensuring that we are providing resources that are inclusive to our students. And so the ways in which we're going about that right now, this fall, we're kicking off our Raise Up GW certificate program. That is an opportunity for all of our students, graduate, undergrad, to sign up. It's a really easy application to complete, but you can apply to be part of this program. And the program will take you through what it means to be well. What does it mean to have a well community at GW? It'll also give us the opportunity to hone in on the 8 dimensions of well-being. So you'll have the opportunity to participate in activities and workshops like we're doing here tonight, to learn how to better inform or better improve your different dimensions and areas of well-being. So from social and emotional well-being to environmental and intellectual well-being are all things that we cover in the Raise Up GW initiative. And that website does offer a slew. We're actually working to update it right now. A slew of different resources, both at GW, beyond GW, virtual resources, podcast recommendations, all within those different dimensions. So you can access those things on your own.
Thank you, Saray. Yeah, so before I go into what I do, I want to answer Brianna's question. So Brianna asked the question of how do we, during COVID-19 times, deal with stress on the job or while in class? So I want to bring back what Saray and Dr. Barlow kind of just kind of expressed. We're encouraging you to think about self-care and self-love as a proactive, think about it in a proactive manner. So we're encouraging you to, after this call or after this recording that you see, to build your own self-care plan, your self-love plan. So that includes, okay, how do we put our tools in the toolbox? Who are our top 5 people? Who are our board of directors that we can contact? That's if you want to use a connect approach to self-care. Okay, what are your mindfulness techniques? Do you want to use a 5-7-9? Do you want to do the body scan that I'll do in just a second? So think about those things that you could use when crisis hits or when stress hits. And then think about the disconnect techniques. Do you want to listen to Sade? Maybe not. Maybe you want to listen to Beyonce, or maybe you want to listen to the baby. I don't know. Whatever gets you feeling good, right? So that's what we're encouraging you to do, is to build your self-love plan before crisis hits, because it goes back to what Dr. Barlow just said earlier in the call, is that when our brain is experiencing like danger or whatever it perceives as danger and stress, and oftentimes shift to how do I survive, right? And so that's either if we're experiencing trauma, violence, or stress. Our brain is like, how do I survive? And oftentimes we aren't able to control how our brain wants to survive. And that could be the fight, flight, and freeze responses. That's involuntary and that you have no control over. So sometimes that could be, oh my gosh, I'm just going to sit here and watch Netflix because I know I have homework. I know my mom wants me to call her. I know I got this class at 7 p.m. I know X, Y, and Z. I just can't do any of it. And you cannot control how your body responds to trauma or how it responds to stress. So that's why we're encouraging you to build the self-care plan before you're in that moment. Because when you're in that moment, your brain is not trying to think creative. It's not going to be like, oh, let me go look at this plant that I named after myself. No, it's not. It can't even think outside of what's happening. So that's what we're encouraging you to do. Before you get in the stressor, think about what you can employ and know that it's trial and error. Like, it took me a long time to realize that I wanted to get a plant to name after myself. It took me a long time to realize that Sade works for me, right? And so knowing that it's going to be a trial and error, and be patient with yourself. Just because one thing doesn't work doesn't mean that you should stop trying to think about how to pour into yourself and give yourself love. Just try something else. And it may not be any of these techniques that we talked about today, but figure out and play with what may work for you. So that's what I just wanted to add in. I don't know if Dr. Barlow, you want to add to that question before I go into my role?
Yeah, before you go into your role, I just want to add to that, just to personalize it. every morning when I wake up, like literally I wake up, use the bathroom, brush my teeth, do whatever. The first thing I do after that is I dance. And it could be any type of song. So I'm not, like you gave the range. I dance to it all, right? So I have my very ratchet moments in the morning, and then I have my very calm and chill moments, and then I have my Beyonce moments. And so it's whatever I'm feeling in that day. But for me, the movement, the dancing, it's so essential to just cultivating what kind of joy and energy I want to intentionally move in that day. And so I encourage you, it might not be dance for you, but to find out what it is for you and to show yourself some grace in this moment while you're figuring it out, and work on that like negative self-talk that we often have. Because you might be like, for me as a researcher, I'm looking at all these folks I know who have been producing so many papers, because as faculty, we're supposed to do research. And I'm looking at them, I'm like, how are you all writing? Right? How are you writing? How are you going after grants and doing all this? I'm just trying to function, right? And that's okay. So I had to show myself a lot of grace in this moment and say, you know what, you're doing all these other things because you are healthy, you're strong, etc. And if I only got one paper done this summer, I can celebrate that too, right? And so you have to figure out what works for you and to show yourself some grace in the process.
Thank you, Dr. Barlow. Saray, do you have anything you want to add before? No? Maybe? Okay, you sure? Okay, that was great. Thank you, Brianna, for posing that question. And if you all have any other questions, feel free to put those in the chat and we can try to answer those in this moment as well. So my name is Tamara like camera with all A's. And yeah, so my role on campus is the Assistant Director for the Office of Advocacy and Support. Basically, our role on campus is to serve as a confidential resource that provides support in a variety of ways to people who experience trauma or violence. It doesn't have to be an experience that's defined under a policy, under a statute, or under a law. It can be someone experiencing continuously being misgendered in class, or continuously being misgendered in a student org, or etc. It could be, us trying to navigate COVID on top of the discrimination and police brutality that's happening out here in the world. So it's a number of things that we are here to lend support and offer support for students, faculty, and staff. And that's one thing that a lot of people don't know or really understand, is that our office is available and free for everyone on our campus. So students, faculty, and staff, even if you're a visitor and you're visiting one of your friends here on our campus, we can provide those resources. Yes, Brianna, a lot of people don't know. And so what does that look like? So my office, we oftentimes will lean so legal support. So we will provide some pro bono resources. So let's say someone is interested in talking about their rights and options on or off campus. We are going to link people with accessible resources that can represent them for free, or a sliding scale. We also provide counseling or counseling resources off campus that are free and sliding scale. And then also we're connecting people with the resources around reporting if they want to talk through what the processes are. So we can talk through the Title IX process without you having to talk to Title IX, because they have a different reporting status. So we're confidential and you can talk with us without us having to share any information with anyone else without your permission. And so really our approach in leaning support is that healing is non-linear. We recognize that just like self-care is not linear, it looks different for everyone, healing also looks different. And so we recognize that, and when we're entering into a space to offer support to a person, we're thinking creatively of how do we help them begin their healing journey, because maybe it's not reporting, and maybe they don't even want to talk to us. So how do we set up a space where we can help people begin to heal? So that's a few of the things that we do on our campus. And how do you reach us? You can either call us at 202-994-0443, or you can reach us at oas@gwu.edu. And then lastly, my office, we also are charged with prevention curriculum and prevention facilitation on our campus around sexual assault and cultural change and healthy relationships, etc., sex and consent. We love talking about sex and consent. So if you ever want to talk about it, we here. Saray's team as well. Like, we love having those conversations and being transparent and open. And so if you ever want to have a program with your student org, or maybe it's just you, or maybe it's your office, we do have a tab on our website that you can request to have a workshop with your student org or your friends and your colleagues. So that's available as well. So that's us. And let me say, we are one of the only confidential resources on campus. So Saray talked about CAPS, the Counseling and Psychological Services. Outside of them, we are the only other confidential resource on campus. And so we're confidential under policy, GW, but also under the district. So we are privileged under the district as well. So that's important.
I just so love collaborating with Saray and Tamara because they do very important work on campus for students, for faculty, for staff. And in this moment where there's ongoing trauma, all of us are trying to figure it out. And so I just appreciate you all. But then I also have to ask you all a question. So we have students in the honors program, right? That, like all of our students, they're at home, or they might be, not on campus. There are some students who are on campus. What advice do you have to them as they're navigating this online experience? And what are suggestions? I know that you mentioned a self-care plan, but what are some things that you would offer to these students as they're moving forward?
For sure. One of the things that our office always tries to encourage students to do or have in addition to the self-care plan is a routine. COVID right now, where some of us are not waking up at the 6 a.m. that we normally would and eating breakfast or running to Starbucks or running to that place and grabbing the whatever and jumping on the metro and then taking the bus and then getting to campus and having our usual walk to campus and looking at the monuments and all that. We're not doing that, most of us. Routine is going to be really, really important as a part of that self-care plan. So literally, yes, the metro. Literally waking up at a reasonable hour. So don't wake up 5 minutes before your class is about to start and then immediately log on. One could argue that, well, I was already doing that when I was on campus, waking up 5 minutes before. If you were, okay. But you want to be sure to establish a routine. So waking up at a reasonable hour, setting time for classes, setting time for studying, setting time for hanging out with friends. So although you may not be hanging out, like that FaceTime date or FaceTime call, group chat, it's still going to be really important. For those of you that are not living alone, whether you're living with housemates, you are living with family members, also have a conversation with your family or with those that are living around you about what routine looks like. So what time do folks have classes where you're living? What time, if you're with parents, guardians, family members who are working, what are their meeting schedules for the week? What is the expectation around who's using the computer? A lot of our students don't have households right now that have multiple computers or multiple laptops. And I want to honor that. So it may be a space where someone is using the laptop or the computer at a certain hour. Making sure that Wi-Fi connection is up to speed in a way that's going to support if there are a number of different devices running at once. When is lunch time scheduled for? A lot of our students typically when on campus wouldn't schedule lunch. They just kind of go when they saw a friend or just kind of, hey, I think it's time to eat. But setting a time for lunch, whether alone on a FaceTime date, a lunch date, on a WebEx date with a friend, doing something with family members is going to be significant during this time. So having a routine, your self-care plan and a routine for yourself, for those that are living around you is going to be really important during this time so that you don't fall into that COVID slump.
And then my suggestion would be knowing your resources and knowing your resources for yourself, but also for your friends, your colleagues, etc. I think that's important. So realizing that you're not alone. If you want to be alone, I welcome that. But you're not alone. If you don't want to be alone, even if it's, I just don't have anyone to talk to, you can call that 0443 number. Somebody's going to answer the phone between 7:30 and 5, and we can just talk, It may not be me, it may be another member of my office, but that's what we're here for. And so realizing that, even if you don't want to talk, you just want to sit on the phone and just listen. Okay, I can talk to you. I can sing some Sade. I can do whatever. So knowing that you have some resources here on our campus, and if they're not accessible, let us know how we can make them accessible. If we need to change some times, we're open to have those conversations. And so just knowing your resources so that if you want to use them, you can use them. If a friend needs to use them, so example with Saray that she's mentioning, maybe you have been talking to a friend on FaceTime and they said that they're having a really hard time. They haven't been able to sleep and their family is taking over the laptop and they can't really focus. How do you help them, right? Because you've already poured into yourself. We're hoping that you are continuously pouring into yourself. But how do you also lean support? And maybe knowing that, CAPS is available. Saray's office is available. Tamara's office is available. It's a really good way to help someone else as well. So I would say that.
One other thing I wanted to add to, I love all these conversations about the Metro. I miss the random Metro people that you see. I hope that they're doing well. I hope that when it is time to get back on the Metro and the bus, that my people, my strangers, are there. I did want to provide a visual element. I've done this before in other trainings and workshops, because a lot of times self-care, when we get to this part in the conversation, some folks are like, okay, so I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. But sometimes there's still this like, but why? Like, why is this really important? Like, I hear all the things that Dr. Barlow is saying, I hear all the things that Tamara is saying. Why does this matter? So I have my 2 glasses. I'm gonna have my nice little GW shirt. I had on a workout shirt earlier too, but then I was like, I'm gonna have to do this visualization. So I wanted to make sure I had a nice GW logo there. Can y'all see this okay, everyone? Awesome. So I have 2 glasses. This glass is empty, completely empty. This glass has water in it. So self-care is literally pouring in to yourself. One, recognizing that we take a lot of time to pour into other people. So this is other people responsibilities, things that we have to do, and this is us. We are full, we are thriving, we are ready to give, we are excited. So typically, we have some type of responsibility. We have to care for a parent. So we are pouring a little bit of our energy, a little bit of ourselves into someone or something, some responsibility. We have a loved one our friend who lost a family member, and we are cooking them dinner. And so we have made sure that everything is cut up nicely and they made them a really nice dinner. Maybe we have a dog or a plant or an animal that we have to provide for. So we are taking them for a walk. We're making sure that they are cared for. We have jobs that we have to do. So we're pouring into our jobs and making sure that that we're being great and successful in our careers. We are studying and going to class. We want to make sure that all of those things are taking care of, those responsibilities. Maybe we're in a sorority. So we have a sorority meeting. We've got to make sure the minutes are ready. We've got to make sure that that program is set up. We've got to make sure that that event is on the GW calendar. We're doing all of those things, right? Folks are laughing. We got to do all those things, right? So we have poured quite a bit into all of our responsibilities, the stuff, the people, etc. And we have a little bit left for us. We're not thriving the way that we were. We're managing, but eventually there's going to be a test or a paper that we've got to take care of. Eventually there's going to be a 1 o'clock phone call where a friend needs us and we've got to take care of them and support them. And so before you know it, we have poured all of ourselves into others, into things, into stuff, into people. If we don't take the opportunity to pour back into ourselves via self-care, we will continue to be empty. We will continue to not feel whole. We will find ourselves on the couch. We will find ourselves being very reactionary in our self-care and doing like a quick mud mask just so we can feel something, right? And so when we talk about self-care is taking the energy, the know-how, understanding the purpose, and pouring into yourself. And so that is every day waking up in the morning and having a personal dance party. That is every day listening to your podcast. That is every day talking to and watering the plant that you named after you. That is every day calling someone on the board of directors, your best friend, doing a FaceTime of some kind to make sure that you have an outlet, someone to connect with. That is going to therapy maybe once a week, once every other week. That's attending a self-care workshop to see like what are some new tools and skills that I can develop. That is literally brushing our teeth and washing our face every day, even though we're not going anywhere. Those things count as self-care. So I want to encourage you all to recognize you literally can't pour from an empty cup. I have a water bottle here. I drank all the water out of it. As we're doing this workshop, there is nothing left. There's nothing in this water bottle. I can't give anybody something that I don't have. I can't give my scholarship. I can't give my academics anything if I don't have anything to give. So when we talk about self-care, we are literally talking about ensuring and making sure that you have something in your cup to sustain yourself, to sustain your responsibilities, to sustain your community as well. So that's just always a nice little visualization we like to share to kind of round things up here. Thank you for that.
Yes, no, I love it. I put it in the chat. Like, I love that visual. I think it just so reminds us the importance of not only self-care, but our connection to all those things that mean a lot to us, our communities. So thank you so much for that, Saray. So I don't want to keep us too much longer tonight, because I recognize we have all had screen time, and we are here to share with you tips on self-care. But before we leave, I know that Tamara has a great exercise for us, yet another tool to add into your toolbox. And so I'm going to turn it over to her, and then after her, Bethany will close us out, unless Saray had anything else to add. All right, wonderful. Okay, Tamara, you're taking us out.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Barlow. Thank you, Saray, for that demonstration. I always love it. I always get something out of it every time. It's a reminder. So we're going to do a grounding technique. Saray mentioned it earlier. It's called the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So it's us redistributing kind of the energy and the stress from our head and our mind down to our body, and then letting it out through our fingers, right? Okay. So everyone, sit wherever you're sitting. Just sit upright. You don't have to look at me. You don't have to look at the screen. But I want you to acknowledge 5 things you see around you. So take a few moments. Put your eyes on 5 things. Admire it. I'm admiring my plants. Okay? 5 things? All right. Acknowledge 4 things that you can touch around you, and touch those 4 things. If they're close by, okay. And then I want you to acknowledge 3 things you can hear. Maybe it's really quiet, but quiet is still a noise. There's still a very subtle noise. Rain. Is it raining? Maybe you have some music playing in the background. Okay. Maybe you got some thoughts going on. What are you hearing? Okay. Acknowledge 2 things you can smell. Dr. Barlow has some food in the oven, so I know you can smell that. I smell this candle. What are you smelling? Okay. And then acknowledge 1 thing you can taste. We've seen a lot of things. We've smelt a lot of things. What are you tasting? And then I just want you to do a deep breath in for 5. Hold for 7 if you can. And then let out for 9. We're letting go all of that stress we came in with, all the stress we may have had as a result of this conversation. We're hopefully leaving with some knowledge, some relaxation, and love for ourselves. Okay, Bethany, the floor is yours.
I just want to thank you three so much for being here. This is really amazing, and our students will find this really useful. And the work that you're doing in general at GW is just fantastic. And we should do a better job of talking about you. And so I am committing to that. We're gonna advertise your services more because I really think it's important that our students recognize all the things that are available to them. So. Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you all. This was
okay. Thank you.
Thank you.